shadows are frightening because of what you see. But what if you woke up at noon and the sun still hadn't risen? The streets were there, the cars were moving, the city was still there, but there was no daylight, no sunrise, no warmth, just an unnatural darkness covering everything. And when Nathan looked outside, he realized something terrifying. The sun wasn't hidden behind the clouds. It was gone. This is 9 Lives of Fear.
The first thing I noticed was the red glow of my digital clock. For one brief instant, that luminous screen was everything there was. I blinked, groggy from a long, dreamless nap, and as my tired eyes cleared, I was confronted by ghostly numbers piercing into me with merciless accuracy. 12 o'clock noon. I froze, unable to move. An unbearable, tangible discord struck my chest like a physical force. My body went rigid, and the world outside felt like a selfish darkness. I looked to the window, waiting for the sun to shine through the curtains at noon. Instead, I saw the dull, gray darkness of a flat piece of obsidian. Nothing about the empty sky was normal. It felt heavy, oppressive, so wrong that I wanted to shrink, to scream, to run. The quiet was worse than the loudest noise of an ordinary afternoon. The cars rushing down the street, the neighborhood dogs, the usual midday chatter. All of it was gone. The silence made my skin crawl, left me itching with the need to do something, anything. I stepped from my bed onto the cold wood floor, bare feet slapping the boards twice before I lunged to pull open the blinds. I pictured the blinding brightness of a regular October Tuesday at noon, but what greeted me was something else entirely, a world drowning in darkness. I watched the streetlights flicker and ugly, dying orange against the black, not lighting the asphalt so much as gouging small, frightened holes out of the darkness. Then the neighbors arrived. Mr. Collins from the next block over stood wrapped in a bathrobe, a thick maglite in hand. As if called to battle stations, people came out onto their porches with flashlights, beams sweeping eagerly through the black like searchlights hunting for ships lost in unfamiliar seas. No one spoke, they only stared upward, faces lit ghostly pale, terror frozen wide in their eyes, into a sky that was no longer blue. Only a few heartbeats separated that strange gathering from the realization of planetary disaster. I sank into my chair, fingers shaking as I booted my computer. I couldn't open any of the news sites, they had buckled under a trillion colliding hits. I pulled up a live satellite feed I normally used for weather research. My horrified face was lit by a cold, clinical blue glow. The western hemisphere was dark, no city lights, no glow of the atmosphere, no flickering auroras, only a featureless, eerie blankness where the sun should have been. A warning flashed in the corner of the display, sensors offline. 0 solar radiation detected. The satellites were still up there, their systems running fine, but the readings they sent back to Earth defied belief. The universe had frozen, the sun had been erased. By 1 o'clock, the initial surge of shock had curdled into fear in its oldest, darkest form. The world hadn't ended in a dazzling fireball. It was dying slowly, gasping. From my window, I could see the deserted city streets, drivers slumped over their steering wheels, headlights casting faint, flickering ellipses of light against the dark horizon. Nearby, I saw a man slumped against a concrete ledge, face buried in his hands, shoulders working up and down as though he were watching the world vanish before his eyes. A newspaper lay wet on the pavement, its headline screaming, "Worldwide Blackout." The city skyline looked like jagged, shattered teeth biting up into a crushing black roof. No wind, no birds, nothing marked the passage of time in a world that no longer held any life. All the familiarity that came with dawn, with the slow-turning cycle of life, had been stripped away, and I sat shivering beneath the shadow of an infinite, indifferent void. Days passed, then weeks, perhaps time itself reduced to meaningless, shapeless motes drifting through that dead darkness. The town by the sea became a cemetery of hopes and dreams. Even its skyline seemed to stare, piercing and fixed, up into an unchanging sky. I had wandered until I found myself on the cobalt-gray cliffs above the sea, staring at water that had fused into a dead, leaden glaze. There was only a mind-crushing, indeterminate silence, as though the world itself were waiting for some summons to release it from the soundlessness. Nothing came. On a weathered, salt-laced park bench lay a single wristwatch. It gave off a dull, sickly glow, though it was dead, and yet the second hand still moved, without concern or error. A small, bitter irony, a timer built to track time in a world that no longer had any. Perhaps the worst part was that it no longer mattered to anyone but me. As I looked out over the waning sparks of the city, I understood that the pain had changed. It was no longer the pain of darkness, for the darkness had simply become part of the eternal. The horizon was now a dead, flat nothing. Now that the world was gone, now that permanence was no longer a concept reserved for philosophers and poets, I finally understood what forever really meant.
We often think of darkness as something temporary. Night ends, the sun rises, morning always comes. But what if one day it didn't? Nathan discovered that the most terrifying thing about darkness isn't what might be hiding inside it. It's the possibility that the light may never return. Because sometimes the scariest word isn't darkness, it's forever. Until next time, keep the lights on and never assume morning is guaranteed. You've survived another tale from 9 lives of fear, but don't get comfortable. If the shadows whispered to you tonight, hit like before they whisper again. Share this video with someone who thinks they're brave. Let's see how long their courage lasts. And subscribe, because around here, every click feeds the darkness, and the darkness remembers. Where the shadows linger long after the story ends. Stay scared.